The darkness of the Mariana Trench seemed endless as the research vessel Horizon floated above the deepest point on Earth. The team aboard had been conducting what they thought would be another routine deep-sea exploration, but fate had other plans that day. Chief Scientist Dr. Lee stood at the control panel, her eyes fixed on the sonar readings. She'd spent 15 years studying these waters, but something about today's data made her heart race. The readings showed a perfectly symmetrical structure where there should have been nothing but ocean floor. "Everyone, come look at this," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement. The crew gathered around the monitors, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of the screens. The structure appeared massive, nearly the size of 3 football fields. "That's not natural," whispered Professor Kumar, the team's geologist. He adjusted his glasses, leaning closer to the screen. "Those angles, they're too perfect. Whatever this is, it wasn't made by nature." The discovery sent ripples of excitement through the scientific community. Within hours, research teams from around the world were boarding planes, all racing to join the investigation. The media caught wind of the story, and soon the whole world was watching. Using their advanced submersible, the team captured the first images of the structure. What they found left them speechless. Rising from the ocean floor like a sleeping giant was a metallic object covered in intricate patterns. The patterns seemed to pulse with a faint, bluish light that shouldn't have been possible at such depths. Dr. Lee and her team worked around the clock, analyzing every inch of the structure. The markings on its surface defied explanation. They weren't like any known human language or simple system. Carbon dating suggested the impossible. The structure was over 300 million years old, predating even the dinosaurs. But the real mystery began when they tried to take samples. Every time their equipment touched the surface, the structure emitted strange energy readings. It was as if the object was responding to their presence, like a sleeping creature slowly stirring awake. The team's resident physicist, Dr. Patel, couldn't hide his amazement. "These energy signatures," he explained during a late-night briefing, "they're unlike anything we've ever recorded. It's not electrical, not nuclear. It's something completely new to science." As word spread, governments worldwide began taking interest. Military vessels appeared in the area, claiming to provide security, but everyone knew they were there to stake their claim on whatever secrets the structure might hold. Then came the dream. Every member of the research team reported the same vision on the same night, strange symbols floating through their minds, a sense of something vast and ancient trying to communicate. When they compared notes the next morning, they realized the symbols matched the ones on the structure perfectly. The discovery was about to change everything they thought they knew about human history, about Earth's past, and humanity's place in the universe. But as Dr. Lee stared at the structure through the submersible's windows, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just observing this ancient object, it was observing them too. Little did they know, this was just the beginning. The God King battleship was stirring from its ancient slumber, and its awakening would shake the foundations of human civilization forever. The research team hadn't slept in days. The mysterious structure in the Mariana Trench had started behaving differently, sending out pulses of energy that made their instruments go haywire. Dr. Lee's hands shook as she poured her 5th cup of coffee, her eyes never leaving the monitoring screens. "These readings don't make any sense," Professor Kumar muttered, running his hand through his messy hair. The energy signatures had been growing stronger by the hour, creating patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The entire research vessel hummed with a strange vibration that everyone could feel in their bones. Late that night, something extraordinary happened. As the team was running routine scans, their equipment triggered something unexpected. The structure's surface began to glow with an intense blue light, visible even through miles of ocean water. The sea itself seemed to vibrate with energy. "Everyone to their stations," Dr. Lee shouted, her voice steady despite the fear and excitement coursing through her. "Document everything." The crew scrambled to their positions, cameras rolling, sensors recording every detail of what was unfolding before them. The massive object started to move. Sections of it shifted and realigned, like a giant puzzle solving itself. The movement caused massive underwater currents that rocked their research vessel. Through their submersible cameras, they watched in awe as layers of ancient sediment fell away, revealing more of the structure's true form. It's transforming," Dr. Patel whispered, his eyes wide behind his glasses. What they had thought was just a mysterious structure was revealing itself to be something far more incredible, a spacecraft of impossible size and complexity. Military vessels in the area began broadcasting urgent messages. Their sonar had picked up movement from the depths, and it wasn't just the structure, something else was stirring in the deep waters around it. Strange lights danced through the darkness of the ocean, creating patterns that reminded the team of computer circuits. The ship's AI system crackled to life with an automated warning: unknown energy signature detected, power levels exceeding all known measurements. The readings were off the charts, suggesting that whatever they had awakened possessed technology far beyond current human understanding. Water around the structure started to bubble and churn as if boiling, despite the near-freezing temperatures at that depth. The research team's equipment captured footage of what looked like ancient machinery coming to life, pieces moving with impossible precision after millions of years underwater. Then came the sound, a deep, resonating hum that penetrated the whole of every ship in the area. It wasn't just a noise. It felt like a message, like something ancient was trying to communicate with them. Every person who heard it described feeling a strange connection, as if the sound was speaking directly to their minds. The military ordered an immediate evacuation of all civilian vessels, but Dr. Lee and her core team refused to leave. They couldn't abandon this discovery, not when they were on the brink of understanding what they had found. Besides, something told them they were meant to be there. As night fell, the ocean itself seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. The structure had fully awakened, and satellite images showed it was larger than anyone had initially realized. What they had discovered wasn't just an ancient artifact, it was something that would change the course of human history forever. The team gathered on the bridge, watching through their cameras as the final transformation took place. None of them spoke, they didn't need to. They all understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented in human history. The God King battleship was awakening, and Earth would never be the same. Little did they know, high above Earth's atmosphere, others were watching too. The awakening of this ancient vessel had sent ripples through space itself, catching the attention of those who had been searching for it for millennia. The real challenge was about to begin. The world changed on a quiet Tuesday morning. The first signs appeared as strange disturbances in global satellite communications. Phone signals dropped, internet connections failed, and television broadcasts flickered with static. At first, people blamed it on solar flares or technical glitches. Then they appeared. Massive ships emerged from what looked like tears in the sky, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They positioned themselves in a perfect formation above Earth's major cities, casting enormous shadows that turned day into dusk. Back at the Mariana Trench research site, Dr. Lee and her team watched in stunned silence as their instruments detected the approaching vessels. The ancient structure they had awakened seemed to respond to the new arrivals, its energy patterns shifting into what Professor Kumar described as a defensive stance. "Look at the patterns." Dr. Patel pointed at his screen, his voice barely a whisper. "They're identical to the markings on our structure." The similarities were undeniable. These visitors clearly had some connection to the object they discovered. The first message came through every electronic device simultaneously, in every language on Earth. The aliens identified themselves as the Vextai, an ancient race that had been searching for what they called the God King vessel for thousands of years. "Your species has awakened something you cannot comprehend," their message stated. "Surrender the vessel immediately, or face the consequences of your interference." Their words carried a weight that made even the bravest military commanders pause. But the ancient structure had other plans. As the Vextai ships maintained their threatening positions, the vessel in the Mariana Trench began to rise. The ocean parted around it like a curtain, revealing a sight that left millions watching in awe. What emerged was a ship of impossible beauty and power, its surface covered in patterns that now glowed with brilliant light. The military tried to establish a perimeter, but their ships and aircraft seemed tiny and insignificant next to both the alien fleet and the rising ancient vessel. World leaders huddled in emergency sessions, trying to decide how to respond to this unprecedented situation. Dr. Lee's team, still aboard their research vessel, found themselves at the center of it all. Their instruments were the only ones capable of understanding the complex energy patterns being exchanged between the two alien forces. It was like watching a conversation written in light and energy. "They're afraid," Dr. Patel realized, analyzing the readings. "The Vextai, they're not just here to claim the vessel, they're terrified of it." The energy signatures from the alien fleet showed patterns consistent with fear and aggression. The situation reached its peak when the Vextai launched what appeared to be a scan toward the God King vessel. The response was immediate and spectacular. A shield of pure energy erupted around the ancient ship, extending to protect not just itself, but the entire research fleet below it. That's when the most extraordinary thing happened. The God King vessel began transmitting its own message, not just to the Vextai, but to everyone on Earth. The message wasn't in words, it was in images and emotions that somehow everyone could understand. It showed a history older than humanity, of a civilization that had once protected Earth, who had left their greatest creation dormant until humanity was ready. The Vextai weren't the rightful owners they claimed to be. They were the very threat the vessel had been created to defend against. As the sun set on that historic day, humanity found itself caught between two alien powers, one that wanted to claim Earth's newfound guardian, and one that had apparently been waiting millions of years to protect us. The God King vessel hovered protectively over the planet, its presence both reassuring and terrifying. Nobody knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain: Earth's first contact with alien life had just become a lot more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Nobody expected what happened next. As the world held its breath, watching the standoff between the Vextai fleet and the ancient God King vessel, the massive ship made a decision that would change everything. It chose its commander. Dr. Lee was in the middle of analyzing data when a beam of soft blue light engulfed her. Her colleagues watched in amazement as she was gently lifted from the deck of their research vessel. "Don't interfere," she managed to call out as security personnel reached for their weapons. Something about this felt right, like a moment she'd been waiting for her whole life. The light carried her toward the God King vessel through an opening that appeared in its gleaming hull. Inside, she found herself in a vast chamber that seemed to pulse with life. The walls were covered in the same mysterious patterns they'd observed on the outside, but here they moved and shifted like living things. "Welcome, chosen one," a voice echoed in her mind. It wasn't exactly words, more like thoughts and feelings translated into something she could understand. "Your genetic pattern matches the criteria set by the ancestors. You are compatible." Screens of light appeared around her, showing star maps and histories of civilizations she'd never imagined. The ship was sharing its knowledge with her, teaching her about its purpose and powers. With each passing moment, she felt her consciousness expanding, connecting with the vessel's vast network of systems. Back on the research ship, Professor Kumar and Dr. Patel watched their instruments in disbelief. "The energy signatures, they're synchronizing," Dr. Patel muttered, adjusting his glasses. "It's like the ship and her brainwaves are becoming one." The transformation wasn't just mental. Fine lines of light began appearing on Dr. Lee's skin, forming patterns similar to the ship's markings. They didn't hurt. Instead, they felt like extensions of her own nervous system. Through them, she could feel every part of the massive vessel, from its powerful engines to its advanced defense systems. The Vextai noticed the change too. Their ships shifted position, weapons charging. Their next message was filled with disbelief. Impossible. A primitive species cannot command the God King vessel. This defies all prophecies. But the ship had made its choice. Dr. Lee understood now why it had waited so long, buried in Earth's deepest trench. It hadn't just been waiting for humanity to find it. It had been waiting for the right human, someone whose mind could handle the connection to its ancient systems. Through her new link with the ship, she learned more about the ancestors who had built it. They hadn't just been advanced. They had understood something fundamental about human consciousness that modern science was only beginning to grasp. The patterns on the ship weren't just decorative. They were a language written in the same mathematical patterns found in human brainwaves. The transformation completed just as the sun rose over the Pacific. Dr. Lee opened her eyes, which now held a hint of the same blue light that pulsed through the ship. She could feel the vessel's power humming through her veins, waiting to be directed. I understand now, she spoke, her voice carrying to both her research team and the Vextai fleet above. This ship wasn't left here by accident. Earth was chosen. We were chosen. And I know why the Vextai are so afraid. The ship responded to her thoughts, displaying its capabilities in ways that made both humans and aliens watch in awe. But Dr. Lee knew this was just the beginning. The God King vessel had awakened to face a threat, yes, but also to guide humanity towards something greater than themselves. As she stood in the ship's control chamber, watching the sun rise through walls that could become transparent at her thought, Dr. Lee realized that every moment of her scientific career had been leading to this. She wasn't just a researcher anymore. She was the bridge between humanity's present and the legacy of an ancient civilization that had seen humanity's potential millions of years ago. The truth hit like waves crashing against a shore. Through her connection with the God King vessel, Dr. Lee began to see visions of Earth's hidden past. They came in flashes at first, glimpses of a world that existed hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the first dinosaurs walked the Earth. You need to see this, she called to her team, who had been brought aboard the vessel. The ship responded to her thoughts, projecting three-dimensional images all around them. They watched in amazement as the story of Earth's ancient guardians unfolded before their eyes. The ancestors, as they called themselves, hadn't looked quite human. They were beings of extraordinary intelligence who had achieved harmony between biological and technological evolution. Their civilization had spread across multiple galaxies, but they had chosen Earth for something special. They saw something in our planet, Dr. Lee explained, her voice filled with wonder as she translated the ship's knowledge. Something in the very foundations of life here. They saw what we could become. The images showed how the ancestors had faced a terrible choice. A darkness was spreading through the galaxy, not just enemy ships or weapons, but something that threatened the very fabric of space and time. They knew they couldn't defeat it directly, but they could prepare for its return. Professor Kumar stepped forward, his hand passing through a hologram of ancient star maps. So they left us their most powerful weapon, he whispered, finally understanding. But why wait so long? Why not guide us directly? The answer appeared in another series of images. The ancestors had tried that approach on other worlds, gifting their technology too soon. Those civilizations had destroyed themselves, unable to handle such power without the wisdom to use it properly. Earth would be different. The God King vessel was programmed to wait until humanity had evolved both technologically and ethically. Look at this, Dr. Patel called out, pointing to data streams flowing through the air. The ship's power source, it's connected to human consciousness itself. That's why the ancestors chose Earth. Something about human minds resonates with their technology. More revelations followed. The ship showed them how the ancestors had seeded certain genetic markers into early life on Earth, markers that would eventually lead to humans who could interface with their technology. It wasn't just about finding a pilot, it was about finding the right species to carry on their legacy. The vessel's memory banks contained more than just history. There were scientific principles that made their most advanced physics theories look like child's play. Medical knowledge that could revolutionize how we understand the human body. But most importantly, there were warnings. The Vextai, Dr. Lee said, her expression growing serious as she absorbed the information. They're not what they seem. They're running from something, the same thing the ancestors fought. And it's getting closer. The ship's internal lights pulsed faster, sharing urgent information. The ancestors hadn't just left one vessel, there were others sleeping in different corners of the galaxy, each waiting for the right civilizations to find them, to build an alliance strong enough to face what was coming. But first, they had to prove themselves worthy. The God King vessel wasn't just a weapon or a ship, it was a test. How humanity handled this power would determine whether they were ready to learn about the others, to take their place among the stars. As the team absorbed these revelations, they realized the weight of responsibility now resting on their shoulders. They weren't just scientists anymore. They were the first humans to learn humanity's true heritage and the terrible threat it had been preparing to face for millions of years. The Vextai ships still hung in orbit above Earth, but now their presence made more sense. They weren't just here to claim the vessel, they were running out of time. The question was, would humanity prove itself ready for the challenges ahead? The Vextai made their move at dawn. Their ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their weapons charging with an eerie purple glow. They had waited long enough. If humans wouldn't surrender the God King vessel willingly, they would take it by force. Dr. Lee stood in the vessel's control chamber, her heart pounding. Despite the neural connection with the ship, she was still learning its systems. There are too many of them. Professor Kumar's voice crackled through the communication system from the research vessel below. The first attack came as a barrage of energy weapons that lit up the sky. Dr. Lee felt the threat through the ship's sensors before she saw it. Without conscious thought, the God King vessel's defense systems activated. A shimmering shield of blue energy expanded outward, not just protecting the ship, but also extending to cover the ocean and research vessels below. Impossible, came the Vextai transmission. The vessel's systems should be dormant after so long. How are you doing this? Their confusion turned to anger as a second wave of attacks bounced harmlessly off the shield. Through her connection with the ship, Dr. Lee could feel its true power stirring. This wasn't even a fraction of what it could do. The vessel had been holding back, testing her ability to handle its systems. Now, as the threat became real, more of its capabilities were unlocking. Everyone, hold on, she called out to both her team and the military ships nearby. The God King vessel moved with impossible grace for something its size. It rose higher into the atmosphere, positioning itself between Earth and the alien fleet. The Vextai ships launched what looked like glowing nets of energy, trying to entangle the ancient vessel. But with each attack, the ship's defenses adapted and grew stronger. Dr. Lee felt knowledge flowing into her mind, combat strategies perfected over millions of years, technologies beyond human understanding. Look at the readings, Dr. Patel shouted from the research ship. The vessel isn't just defending, it's learning their attack patterns. It's thinking. He was right. The God King vessel was analyzing every move the Vextai made, predicting their strategies before they executed them. Its defensive systems weren't just reactive, they were anticipating and countering attacks that hadn't even happened yet. Then came the moment to strike back. Dr. Lee felt the ship's weapon systems come online. They were different from anything humanity had imagined, not designed to destroy, but to disable and contain. Beams of pure white light shot out from the vessel, carving precise paths through the Vextai fleet. Ships caught in the beams simply stopped working. Their weapons went dark, their engines failed. Some began to drift helplessly in space, while others slowly descended to Earth under the vessel's control. Not a single life was lost, but the message was clear. The God King vessel could have destroyed them if it wanted to. The remaining Vextai ships pulled back, retreating to a higher orbit. Their next transmission carried a different tone, one of respect mixed with fear. We underestimated the vessel's choice, they admitted. Perhaps there is more to your species than we realized. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Dr. Lee realized something profound. The ship hadn't just been testing her ability to control its weapons, it had been teaching her, showing her a better way. Power wasn't about destruction, it was about protection and precision. The sky cleared as the disabled Vextai ships were carefully landed in designated areas around the globe. Military and scientific teams rushed to study them, while diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. Earth had just won its first interstellar battle, and they'd done it without firing a single shot in anger. But Dr. Lee and her team knew this was just the beginning. The God King vessel had revealed only a small fraction of its capabilities. And somewhere out there, the real threat, the one that even the Vextai feared, was still coming. Word spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The ancient God King vessel, lost for millions of years, had not only been found but had chosen a human commander. The news sparked both hope and terror across countless civilizations. Dr. Lee stood at the ship's observation deck, watching as the first diplomatic vessels arrived. They were beautiful and strange. Some looked like crystal gardens floating through space, others like liquid metal flowing through invisible containers. Each represented a different alien civilization coming to see Earth's newfound power for themselves. They're arriving faster than we can process them, Professor Kumar reported, trying to keep track of all the new arrivals. The God King vessel's database helped identify each species, showing their histories and technologies. Some were older than human civilization itself, while others had evolved alongside us, hidden in different corners of the galaxy. Not all came in peace. Through the ship's advanced sensors, they detected several battle fleets hiding behind Mars and Jupiter, watching and waiting. The Vextai defeat had scared them, but also made them more determined. Many believed that humans weren't ready for such power. "We're getting another transmission," Dr. Patel called out. This one came from a species calling themselves the Luminary, beings of pure energy who had once been allies of the ancestors. Their message was urgent. "The awakening of the vessel has stirred something ancient. The darkness moves faster now." More delegations arrived daily. Some offered alliance, sharing stories of their own encounters with the ancestors' technology. Others came with warnings about the responsibility humans now carried. The God King vessel wasn't just a weapon, it was a key to something larger, something that could either save or doom the galaxy. Through it all, the ship kept teaching Dr. Lee. Each day brought new understanding of its systems, and with them, glimpses of what humanity could become. "The patterns are incredible," she explained to her team. "Every piece of this ship is connected to every other piece, like neurons in a brain." But tension was building. The Vextai had begun reaching out to other species, forming a coalition of those who feared what would happen if humans kept control of the vessel. They spoke of prophecies and ancient warnings about power falling into the wrong hands. Earth's governments struggled to handle the situation. How do you manage diplomatic relations with dozens of alien species, each with their own agenda? The God King vessel's presence had thrust humanity onto a galactic stage they hadn't even known existed. One morning, as the sun rose over Earth, something changed. The ship's systems detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the solar system. Through the neural link, Dr. Lee felt the vessel's concern. Whatever was coming, it was exactly what the ancestors had feared. "We need to make a decision," she told the gathered human leaders and alien diplomats. "We can keep fighting amongst ourselves, or we can face what's coming together." The ship projected images of the approaching threat, a darkness that consumed light itself, growing larger with each passing moment. The Vextag representatives were the first to step forward. "We ran from this threat for generations," they admitted. Perhaps that is why the vessel chose your kind. You still have the courage to stand and fight." One by one, other species joined them. Old rivalries were set aside as they realized the truth. The God King vessel hadn't awakened to start a war, but to help prevent one. Its choice of a human commander wasn't about worthiness, but about bringing something new to an ancient fight. As the alliance began to form, Dr. Lee felt the ship's approval. Through its systems, she saw more clearly than ever what the ancestors had seen in humanity, not just the potential for power, but the capacity to bring people together, even in the face of impossible odds. The real test was still coming, but now they wouldn't face it alone. The world changed faster than anyone could have imagined. Scientists from around the globe worked alongside the research team, studying the God King vessel's technology. Each discovery led to breakthroughs that transformed human understanding of the universe. Dr. Lee spent countless hours in the ship's neural interface chamber, diving deeper into its systems. "It's like learning a new language," she explained to her colleagues. "But instead of words, I'm learning how to think in new ways." The glowing patterns on her skin had spread, creating intricate designs that pulsed with the ship's energy. The vessel itself was evolving. It had begun incorporating modern human technology into its ancient systems, creating something entirely new. "Look at this," Professor Kumar said one morning, pointing to his readings. "The ship isn't just accepting our additions, it's improving them." Through the neural link, Dr. Lee discovered why the ancestors had chosen Earth. Human consciousness had something unique, a flexibility that allowed it to adapt and grow in ways other species couldn't match. The ship wasn't just responding to commands. It was learning from her, just as she was learning from it. "The power source," Dr. Patel exclaimed during one late-night study session. "It's not just connected to human consciousness, it's powered by it." The discovery explained why the vessel had waited so long. It needed a species that could truly understand and connect with its systems, not just operate them. Military leaders from various nations watched in amazement as the ship demonstrated its capabilities. But it wasn't the weapons that impressed them most, It was the defensive systems, the ability to protect and preserve rather than destroy. The vessel showed them a new way of thinking about power. The transformation wasn't just technological. People around the world reported strange dreams, visions of stars and distant worlds. The ship explained, through Dr. Lee, that humanity's collective consciousness was starting to expand. They were becoming aware of their place in a much larger universe. Young people seemed especially affected. Children began drawing pictures of alien worlds they'd never seen, describing technologies that shouldn't have existed. The vessel's presence was awakening something that had been dormant in human DNA, the legacy the ancestors had left behind. One breakthrough came when they discovered how to merge modern computer systems with the ship's biological interfaces. It's not about forcing the technology to work together, Dr. Lee realized. It's about finding the harmony that already exists between them. The ship's medical bay proved especially revolutionary. It could heal injuries and cure diseases by working with the body's natural systems, accelerating and guiding natural healing processes. Doctors watched in awe as it repaired damages that would have been fatal just months before. But the most significant change was in how people thought about themselves and their place in the universe. The vessel's database showed them histories of countless civilizations, some that had risen to greatness and others that had fallen to their own fears. Humanity had a choice about which path to follow. Through it all, Dr. Lee felt the ship guiding her, showing her not just how to use its power, but why. The ancestors hadn't just built a weapon, they'd created a teacher, one that could help humanity avoid the mistakes that had destroyed other civilizations. The patterns began appearing in human technology, not just copies of the ship's designs, but new innovations inspired by its principles. Computers became more intuitive, energy systems more efficient. It wasn't just about copying advanced technology, it was about understanding the underlying principles of how the universe worked. As the sun set on another day of discovery, Dr. Lee stood in the ship's control chamber, watching Earth below. The vessel had shown them so much, but she knew they had barely scratched the surface. The real test would be not in mastering the ship's power, but in proving worthy of the trust the ancestors had placed in humanity. The darkness at the edge of the solar system grew closer each day, but now they had hope. They weren't just learning to use a weapon, they were learning to become something more. Earth had changed beyond recognition in just a few months. Cities now sparkled with new technology inspired by the God King vessel. Flying vehicles moved silently through the air, and clean energy flowed freely thanks to principles learned from the ship's power systems. Dr. Lee stood at the United Nations, addressing representatives not just from Earth, but from 20 different alien civilizations. The chamber had been redesigned to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes, from crystalline entities to creatures that looked like living clouds. "We've all seen the signs," she said, her voice steady as the patterns on her skin glowed softly. "The darkness is no longer just a distant threat. We've detected its effects at the edge of our solar system, but we're ready now, in a way we never could have been before." Behind her, holographic displays showed the network of defense stations they'd built throughout the solar system. Each one contained a piece of the God King vessel's technology, adapted and enhanced by human innovation. The ship hadn't just given them tools, it had taught them how to create their own. Professor Kumar's team had made breakthrough after breakthrough. The key was in understanding how consciousness itself shapes reality, he explained to the assembled delegates. The ancestors knew this, and now were beginning to grasp it too. The changes weren't just in technology. People around the world reported feeling more connected, more aware. Children born after the vessel's awakening showed signs of abilities that would have seemed impossible before, natural talents for understanding and working with the new technologies. Dr. Patel's latest readings showed something remarkable. "The ship's influence is evolving our very way of thinking," he reported. "We're not just using the technology, we're growing into it, just as it's adapting to us." The Vextai, once enemies, had become some of Earth's strongest allies. Their ambassador stood to address the assembly. "We sought the vessel for generations, thinking it was a weapon. Now we understand it was something far more important, a bridge between what we are and what we could become." Through the neural link, Dr. Lee felt the ship's satisfaction. This was what the ancestors had hoped for, not just one species wielding their power, but many species working together, each contributing their unique strengths to face the coming challenge. The first test of their new alliance came sooner than expected. A wave of darkness swept through the outer solar system, consuming light and energy in its path. But they were ready. The defense network activated, channels of power flowing between stations in patterns that mirrored the ship's glowing markings. Earth's transformation had come just in time. As the darkness approached, humanity stood not as a primitive species that had stumbled upon advanced technology, but as worthy inheritors of the ancestors' legacy. They had learned not just to use the ship's power, but to understand it, to improve it, and most importantly, to share it. The God King vessel rose into orbit, its massive form now accompanied by smaller ships built with combined human and alien technology. Dr. Lee felt the consciousness of every crew member, human and alien alike, linked together through systems that bridged the gap between mind and machine. "This isn't the end of our journey," she told the assembled representatives. "It's just the beginning. The ancestors left us more than just a ship, they left us a future to build together." As if in response, the God King vessel's lights pulsed brighter, sending a signal that reached across the galaxy. Somewhere out there, other vessels waited to be found. Other civilizations would face their own tests, make their own choices. But here, on Earth, humanity had chosen its path. The darkness approached, but they faced it not with fear, but with determination. They had become something new, not just a species with advanced technology, but a bridge between the ancient past and the infinite possibilities of the future. And that was exactly what the ancestors had hoped for all along.